Alrighty, hello and welcome to Leadership is a Philosophy, Not a Checklist, a book discussion to The Ignorant Maestro. So this is a book by Itay Talgam, who is an Israeli conductor, orchestral conductor, and he wrote this book in 2015 that's sort of an extraction and summary of some videos that he also did in 2009, 2010 that were TED Talks, and he's a business consultant. The reason that I wanted to go with a conductor as or at least this sort of an example of leadership is because, in my estimation, symphony orchestra is the ideal representation of an organization that is functioning correctly. So why do I say that? Well, the first thing is it's based off of competence only, at least now. I mean, you can go back 20, 30, 40 years and mostly men were in the orchestra. But that's dumb because you're assuming that half of the population can't play. And there were some restrictions, but now it seems to me that the most competent people are the ones that are the first chair. You don't get to be, high up in the orchestra by being a bad player. You have to be able to perform. You have to be able to execute. So there's all of that. So you have different sections. You've got the woodwinds, you've got the percussion, you've got the strings. And within that, there's a hierarchy. And if the hierarchy is functioning correctly, then the person that's the best might not be the standout stellar player that's the first chair. It might be the person that's the best coach. You don't know. But you still have to be super competent to rise to that level of excellence. So you don't get to hide. You don't get to be the first chair because they need a fill in the category. They need the first chair because the first chair is the best. And from what I understand, because I'm absolutely not a musician, usually the team picks that person, which is even better. So then here's the person that we want to have that position. Excellent. Now, the same thing that the conductor's doing, he's attenuating the competence and the environmental hierarchies in pursuit of the goal, which is to produce great music. So you can't have a virtuoso who's out playing louder, playing way out of completely exceeding the group, because sometimes the team has to sound like one instrument. Sometimes the team has to have this specific thing going. You can't have somebody that's such a standout that everybody else is obliterated. And the conductor is the one that attenuates that. The conductor is also going to be the one that makes sure that the personalities are taken care of, make sure that whatever the spirit they want for that piece of music is expressed. And so if the conductor is doing their job correctly, then they're sharing, they're distributing, giving their vision out to the team to encourage their team to produce that thing. And as long as they're not being a dictator about it, things are going to function pretty well. And they'll function pretty well if it's a dictator, but it ends up being a problem. So what happens in this book is he picks 6 conductors in history that had different styles. At least if there's videos of them that you can see the way that they conducted, which we're not necessarily sure. I was having a hard time finding good examples of how they did rehearsals. I found some. But that's where I really think you can see whether or not they were a leader or just a dictator. So that pretty much covers it for this. We will proceed into the PowerPoint thing where we'll go through and do a little bit of analysis of each one of those people. Sort of the thing that I found interesting is he used the title Ignorant Maestro to say that you're able to teach somebody something without completely understanding it, which means it's sort of an archetype that you're transferring, or there's wisdom that you're transferring. So it's kind of neat. And then some of the themes that we talk about in the beginning are also there as well. So if this is your first time here, please go back and watch the 9 videos in the very first playlist so that you can understand sort of some of the stuff that we're talking about, because hierarchies of competence and all that sort of stuff is everything that we talk about at the beginning, and that's what we're using to analyze this video. So that's all for now, and we will now proceed to the instructional section. Thanks. Hello, and welcome to the instruction portion of the book discussion that we were going to have. So I just wanted to get right into what this book talks about. So Mr. Talgam goes back and looks back in history, and actually some of them are still alive, at conductors, and has pictures of their leadership style. And the reason I say it's a picture is because you're watching a conductor and it's a performance, but we don't necessarily get to see the way that they rehearse, because at the end of the day, the performance is the culmination of a whole bunch of rehearsal and effort by the musicians and then by the conductor trying to meld all of that stuff together. And so if you really want to see how they actually were as a leader, then I would recommend going and finding videos of most of these conductors when they were doing a rehearsal, because then you get to see how they interacted with people. The end product, in other words, watching the conducting, is a reflection of the way that they were, but not necessarily how specifically they led. So just a little bit of layers. But the pictures are all great because they are archetypical types. If you go and you watch a conductor or these examples, you'll go, oh, I know somebody who's just like that. Anyway, so that's what he does. So he calls them these leadership archetypes. So there's controller, which is Riccardo Muti, and if you go and look at Riccardo Muti back in the 70s, oh, I spelled his name wrong. The Italians are going to come get me. There's only one T in Muti. Riccardo Muti in the 70s and 80s, very strict, very mechanical, very pedantic, very controlling, had to have his hands into everything. And so, super controlling, which makes sense. And then I saw a video of him later on after some stuff had happened in his career where he was basically the conductor of La Scala, which is the Italian orchestra. And they asked him to leave because they didn't appreciate his style. And afterwards, he was having a hard time figuring out why they weren't able, or he had to have that happen. But if you go look at him now, he's the conductor of the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. He's amazing. All these conductors are amazing musicians and have all these incredible talents. So please understand that I'm not knocking them. I'm doing a book review. So then there's The Godfather, which is Arturo Toscanini. And his thing is he's super passionate, obviously Italian. Super passionate, treated the orchestra like a family. And so he took everything so personally, and he took the orchestra's performance so personally that there was all of this passion. And so if they did great, the rewards were great. And if they did terrible, then they got the wrath of Toscanini on them. And so things are getting thrown and things are getting launched at people and a bunch of that sort of stuff. So we'll talk about that leadership style as well, because this is a style. And then there's By the Book, which is Richard Strauss. He just followed the script. Says, look, here's the music, here's what it's supposed to happen, and we're just going to follow the music. Which, once again, By the Book is a leadership style. It all makes sense. Then there's The Guru, which is Herbert von Karajan. And the way that he led is he gave suggestions. Hey, here's an idea. Here's some general guidelines. And didn't necessarily give specific instruction. Now, Herbert von Karajan was super successful composer. He sold more records, I think 200 million records of his recordings. So very popular, obviously an amazing person, but once again, a leadership archetype. You've known people who, I'll know it when I see it. And then there's the leadership dance, which is Carlos Kleiber. So he used his entire being to express the emotion of what he was trying to conduct. So if things were supposed to be sort of quiet, then he got super quiet and tense. If things were supposed to be super loud and emotional, then he's flowing around and dancing on the podium and all this sort of stuff. And so you've seen people like that too. And then you've got the In Search of Meaning, which, once again, Simon Sinek, what's the how? Well, meaning, the why, or show me the why. Why will express it, or will help you be able to achieve something that you're trying to do. Somebody says, move this over here. Okay, why? Well, because if you move this here, then this and this and this. Oh, this is important that I do this correctly. All right. Suddenly you give somebody context and suddenly everything changes. And Leonard Bernstein, obviously, amazing conductor, all these sort of things. But what's interesting, and Leonard Bernstein is going to come up in several more of these videos because Leonard Bernstein was a leader, not just a conductor, not just a musician. And you'll see why. Just remember, you're going to hear Leonard Bernstein a lot. So, what's interesting about these? Well, I've seen people that were strict and inflexible, and I've seen people that were treating everybody like a big family and being too lovey-dovey, and I've seen every one of these archetypes, right? But here's the thing. The great leaders, the people that were natural leaders, used all of these. There may be a team or a person or an event that requires you to take control of the situation. Not all the time, because if you're taking control all the time, then what do you need the people for, right? But you might have a person that needs that. And then that person in that team needs the general suggestions because everybody else on the team operates that way. You may have a team that needs absolute control, but there's a person that works in it that needs general suggestions. You should treat your team like a family at whatever level. But you should treat them like a family, but then be cautious that you're not so intimate with them or so close to them that you can't make rational decisions. Right? You should be able to have expression and emotion. Work does not have to suck, right? The job place does not have to be terrible and dreary. It just doesn't. If that's the place that you have at work, then you need to go fix something, right? Hey, you're making all your numbers and everybody's miserable. What's the point? Oh, congratulations, everybody's suffering. All right, I'll go find somewhere else where they're not suffering so much, and maybe you lose your talent. And then giving somebody meaning. Sometimes you have to sit down, and it may be that the team or this individual just can't see what's going on. So you have to sit down and you've got to spend a half an hour communicating to them why it's important. And, or through this great big team, sometimes that's what they need. Because if people don't understand why they're doing stuff sometimes, then it's not going to work. And so the reason that I say that you have to use all of these different archetypes is because you might use all 6 of these, and there's more, but you might use all 6 of these in 10 minutes. You walk into work, this thing needs direct control. This one is like, remember the theme I gave you? This one is that. And you might never use any of them. You might just be teaching people meaning all day. So you can't have one of these styles. If you have one of these styles, then you're missing the completeness of it. So the reason I say that Leonard Bernstein is sort of exceptional is I've been watching a lot of videos of him, and you see him at times being controlling. You see him at times being a little frustrated. You see him times giving people hugs. You see him doing this entire range of behaviors. But if you think that just one of these is going to work, it'll work for a little bit, but it's not going to be sustainable. You're not going to be able to, if you love everybody like a family, which means you punish everybody because they failed you and you're running around in a bunch of passion, people get freaked out by that. But you do need to have passion, right? So what is it that controls all of that? The leadership philosophy, right? Your vigilance, you're paying attention. Do I need to be strict right now, or can I get away with giving them a guideline? No, this person, I need to take over because this is going to be a crisis. And then I have to do it. I'm going to take control with the most humility possible and making sure that I have enough empathy. But vigilance is what helps you figure that out. Am I going to be, do I need to be all super emotional? You might have somebody that works with you that is, pardon me. You might have somebody that works with you that is 100% almost neurotic, paranoid introvert. And I'm not saying that in a bad way. But if you walk up to that person being super emotional and bouncy and all in their face, shut down immediately. Well, how do you know that? Empathy, humility, integrity, and then vigilance. So that philosophy is going to apply to how you apply these at any given moment, at any given time. I mean, it's amazing. So that's what I think is so amazing about it. So it's sort of what is missing from the book, because he suggests, oh, you should be, dancing and giving people meaning all the time. And every so often you might have to have a moment. Well, the problem is that I can't sit here and tell you, hey, this is the way that you're going to have to do this, because I don't know what's going on in your organization or your team or with somebody at work. But if you're a leader, you know. And so you'll know what it is that you're supposed to do. All right, so important themes. So these are things that are very interesting. And then in conclusion, I just love. So the first one is identifying gaps and keynote listening. Okay, so right there, how do you identify a gap? Vigilance, empathy, and then keynote listening, humility, and integrity. There they are, right? That's just the way that it works. So if there's a gap. Here's something we're supposed to do. I've used this example back in the prelude stuff. Here's what we're supposed to do, and we're not there. Everybody's working real hard, but we are not getting the results that we want. So there's a gap. You walk into work, or you get somebody that's brand new, that's come from some sector. Let's just say that you're working in machinery. You're at a machine shop. I'm just giving radical examples. And you get somebody from the medical field to come in. Well, you're going to have to spend an awful lot of time communicating everything, because the language isn't even the same. You can use one word that means something to a machinist and means something completely different to somebody in the medical field. And so you have to pay attention all the time to look for the gaps, right? The gaps all the time. I've seen this all the time. Here's our core values as an organization. And our most important is that the employees are the most important thing ever. And then I just talked to somebody yesterday that worked for me a few years ago. He's at a new job, and he has not had any interaction with his supervisor except the 3 times that he made a mistake. And the supervisor came over and said, "Why did you screw up?" Guy knows nothing about him. He's been there a year. How ridiculous is that? So you have to have that vigilance, right? Okay, so you're at a 200 person organization or a 5,000 person organization. You might not get to go check on every person, but you should check. You should do a random sample, right? So the values of this company, this is what I thought was so funny when I was doing this preparing for this, is he told me that one of their core values is the employee is the key is the core to everything that we do. And their actions are absolutely the opposite. So nobody's checking on that supervisor. That supervisor's not checking. Nobody's checking. There's no vigilance. And there's no empathy. And there's no integrity in that organization. So, like I said, gaps between understanding, results, execution, those are all the things. So how do you address them? With the philosophy, right? But you have to have the talent to be able to attenuate that. So you have some super strong, super old school supervisor that is old and crusty and doesn't want to go check on his people. Well, you got to tune that up. You either got to fix it, you got to fix him, or you got to move him along, or her. And then keynote listening boils down to paying attention to the speaker, the environment, the rhythm of the business, the rhythm of the organization, right? That's keynote listening. And if somebody's talking, and this is one of Jordan Peterson's 12 rules for life, pretend like or behave like the person that's talking has something to teach you. So you might think that you know everything, especially if you're up in the Crystal Palace and up in the perfumed, rarefied air of the higher headquarters. You need to get out of there and go talk to people, because you might think that something's going on, but you don't know until you've actually talked to some people, right? And so if somebody sits there and says, here's the problem that I'm having, you got to listen, because here's 4 reasons that somebody's complaining, right? The system stinks, and you, Mr. Smarty Pants, might have made the system. The boss stinks, most likely. There's a problem with the team, or the person's lazy, right? But 3 of those are not the individual. The individual is having a problem, so you have to listen carefully. Oh, wait, what's going on? Why is this happening? You got to pay attention to stuff. And what does that take? Humility. You got to empathize with people, because just because you're sitting up there making all your money and being the big boss, and you go down and talk to some brand new person that says the training system sucks, you go, well, no, the training system's flawless. And then you just look a little bit further, and next thing you know, you find out that there's no follow-up, the paperwork wasn't done, nobody actually checked them out, their supervisor didn't actually check them out, they still haven't been integrated, right? So that's keynote listening. It's pay attention. And so I just love it, because it's the philosophy, vigilance. And, and then you have to have the integrity to follow up, because you go and talk to somebody and they bare their soul to you. And then you go, man, I understand that that's really a problem. And then you don't do a thing about it. You just lost that person. I mean, genuinely. So this is the thing that I thought was so funny, because it's such a great analogy. I mean, it's a great analogy. So if you're sensing things aren't going well, right, using your keynote listening, so you walk into work and something's not right. Something's out of tune. Something doesn't feel correct. You can sense that something's not good. And what's the sense? I don't know, but it's vigilance. It's the talent that we talked about with leadership. So you need an iPod of leadership. First, I thought that was so funny, but really, Apple, please don't come after me. You need an MP3 player full of leadership. How's that? But it's in the book, so go get him. So the idea of an iPod of leadership, let's say you walk in and something's out of tune, something's not right. Well, you got to go fix the instrument, which could be the person, or you got to go fix the team. You got to fix the environment, which is also conducting. And that's assuming that the song is correct. In other words, a bunch of things in the environment might have changed, and so now you need to change the music. You might need to do another one of these archetypes. You might need to change the way that you're doing something. You have to figure out what approach, what piece of music, what method of conducting is going to fit with this situation. And the situation may have changed so much that you have to take that entire team and change everything. Well, how do you know that? With vigilance, and with empathy, and with integrity, and then humility. Because humility is, oh my goodness, I put us on this path 3 weeks ago, and we're in chaos right now, right? And so that's the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because what is a song? A song, you take a bunch of instruments and bang them together. Chaos. You organize it. It's a song. Hey, I want to get this sound. Beautiful. Or as an orchestral thing, it would be a piece. So this is the result that I want to get with this piece of music. Great. Well, suddenly an instrument goes wrong. Clang, some of this big clanging noise. Well, is the instrument the problem? Or is the song the problem? So you have to go change the music to bring order to that chaos. Everything's running fine. The music's being played perfectly. Great. Something gets out of tune, there's chaos, you have to attenuate that. That's why I love the orchestra or the music references when you're talking about leadership all the time, because there's something about it that is not mathematical, right? You could get to the point to where something's not right in the string section, and you go down to the string section, and you keep drilling down, and next thing you know, you find out that somebody's got a G string that's bad. So one of the strings on the violin of the 11th player is bad. Well, you might have to get to that level of detail in an entire orchestra. And so, okay, change the string, no problem. Well, then you find out that this person can't ever play on time. Well, you got to get rid of that person. Or you find out that the first chair is being a Mussolini and being a dictator and terrorizing everybody, and so nobody wants to work for them or you because you put them or you support them there. You got to fix that. Or you find out that suddenly the goal is to play with nothing but woodwinds. So now you don't need strings. What do you do with all the string people? I don't know, but it's all chaos. So a bunch of random instruments banging around is chaos. Order is what a conductor does. Brings chaos out of that. Brings order out of the chaos. And the order is the form of music, which is still complex and multi-layered and everything else. I just love that image. Anyway, yeah. So the MP3 player of leadership style. So you know how many songs are in your MP3 player? For those of you that have one, I mean, now that you've got a streaming music service, there's thousands. Well, back in the day, people probably had 100, right? Well, that's what you need. Maybe you have to use a hybrid of all 4 of these 5 different times in a half an hour. That's leadership, right? There's no, oh, here's my checklist. It just doesn't exist. That just doesn't happen, right? But you walk in and you've got everything's in tune, and you've got the empathy going, and you've got the integrity because you're vigilant because you're paying attention, and you're being humble because you don't know. You might not have the answer. So that's the thing. So that one line that he said was probably the most amazing thing in the whole book, because the rest of it is describing the archetypes. But an MP3 player full of leadership approaches, perfect. Because you got to have something for the solution, for the chaos, but you don't know what the chaos is, right? And maybe you don't even have something in your MP3 player, so maybe you have to sit down with an editor. You know, I'm being a little crazy. Anyway, I've gone a little long on this one. I'm sorry, but great book. Highly recommend it. It's a pretty quick read, and then in the video, linked in the video, will be the links for all of the videos that he did, so that you can go watch those. They were TED Talks, but I'll have those linked in the stuff on the YouTube video. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day.